right. Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. So this session is going to be about Obol Labs and bringing distributed validated infrastructure to Ethereum. And we have with us here Colin Myers, CEO and co-founder of Obol Labs. Really pleasure, really great honor for us to have you here, Colin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning and good evening, good afternoon to everybody.
All right, so let's get started. So perhaps a very basic question, right? Can you give us an overview of what Obol Labs is, how you started it, and what's your main mission right now?
Yeah. So today, Obol Labs is a core development team. There's 25 of us today in 14 countries, so a pretty distributed team. It's co-founded by myself and Oshin Kine. And today we're focused on building the Obol network. We're the first core development team of the Obol network, and Nethermind, who we've recently partnered with, is actually the second core development team for the Obol network. Today, we're most focused on the mainnet deployment of Keron, which is the name of our middleware client. We put the world's first distributed validator on mainnet on December 30th of last year, and now we have nearly 20 on mainnet. And we're just in our kind of rapid progression of getting more and more DVs on mainnet, and eventually launching what's called V1, which is the roadmap that we're currently on.
Right. So yeah, just maybe step a bit back, and I think like a lot of people probably want to know more about what DVT is, right? Perhaps can you maybe explain a bit more on what's DVT and how is that like related? How is that different from say staking in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way I like to explain it is I'll walk through a validator today, and then I'll walk through a validator after DVT. So a validator today is three things. It's a public and private key pair. It's a single public and private key pair. It's monolithic, if you will. The second thing that a validator is, it's a machine, one machine. And the next thing that a validator is either an individual or an entity, just, for broad terms, technical terms, call it an agent, right? So it's a public-private key pair, it's a machine, it's an agent. Super monolithic, the validators of today. A validator post-DVT is key shares, a collection of key shares, however many you'd like for them to be, not just one individual key. Therefore, it's much harder to steal, it's much more difficult to lose. It's multiple machines now, not just an individual machine. So what you can do is you can take each of those key shares and run it on, as many machines as you'd like. And then ultimately, the last and most important piece is that DVT enables a validator to be run by a group of people, not just one single individual. And that has like profound effect for removing single points of failure and also decentralizing stake.
Right. And maybe I'd like to touch on that a bit, that you said that there can be a group that's running a validator around, right? I think there's a lot of narrative around liquid staking as well, right? Can you maybe kind of like differentiate that a bit, like difference between liquid staking and versus like DVT?
Yeah. So DVT is complementary to liquid staking. The liquid staking roadmap to become more trust minimized and more decentralized requires DVT as well as a variety of other technologies. But one of the primary building blocks of future liquid staking pools is DVT. I can give you an example as to why it's important. Currently today, liquid staking pools are the most innovative use case of DVT. It's like pushing its cryptographic properties to its fullest limit. So therefore, it's beginning to inform the effort in certain areas, if you will. Whereas over the past year and a half, DVT has shaped the roadmap, right, of liquid staking pools. Now liquid staking is kind of helping with the V2 version of DVT that we're working on at the moment. For a liquid staking pool, let's say there's 15 operators inside of a liquid staking pool. Without DVT, each of these operators is running their own keys, they're running their own machines, and they can shut those machines off whenever they want. They can act malicious, they can sign incorrect messages, they can make a mistake, they could have an employee, steal the keys and go rogue, they could have an internet outage. There's a variety of different things, right, that can happen to a validator inside of a liquid staking pool. But before DVT, they have the ability to hurt a liquid staking pool. Post DVT, they don't have that ability. So what it's doing is actually using DVT for its Byzantine-like properties, which is saying that now if there's a group of 5 validators all sharing one validator, or 5 entities sharing one validator, you can lose 2 of those entities. 2 of those entities can try to act malicious. They can shut their machines off. It doesn't matter. And then it really takes the construct of a validator. Today, a validator, you look at it and they're assumed to be honest. As all the assumptions and designs around validators is that they won't be evil. These validators won't be evil because of social reasons or because of altruism or, because of whatever it may be. DVT enables a validator it can't be evil. So going from, won't be evil to can't be evil is a large step in the infrastructure space.
I think that's a great explanation of how DVT is actually going to support all kinds of staking, right? Now, just want to touch on DVT a bit, right? So I understand that there are different implementations and different design principles in the space. Can you maybe give us an overview of like the kind of like principles that are happening in the DVT space and how Obol is different from others?
Yeah, so for Obol today, I would say our first attempt, which is our V1 currently at DVT, is super collaborative and complementary. It's not here to replace the current clients that you use. It's here to be an add-on, which is why it falls into the new middleware category. And today, Obol is the only DVT project building pure middleware, which is additive to your current client base. Which means that through Obol, you can select any of your ETH1 clients, any of your ETH2 clients. That's kind of where we are at with our hardening of the protocol to later mainnet phases, is working on just continually getting all the different integrations and duties finalized with all the different clients. So from that perspective, it's pure middleware. It's meant to be complementary, and it has a different set of risks when it's just pure middleware. Whereas if it were a pure client, then it kind of has much different risk for the user and much different risk for the network.
I see. Yeah, and I think that the design that Obol has chosen, I think it shows very well in the past recent few weeks, right? Where we have seen Ethereum itself that pause finalization for 30 minutes at a time, and I think twice. And I think the root cause has been around one of the different client implementations having a bug in there, right? Performance bug. So it is great to hear Obol is taking an approach where we can still select different client implementations and actually using multiple client implementations at the same time for the same validators, right? So I think that's a great design to have. So maybe just talking a bit on the DVT side, right? So now the solutions is available. Obol is on mainnet now, right? What do you think is like the main challenges to getting people adopting DVT and adopting Obol?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, our full V1 is 2 major releases away. So right now we're in alpha, we're moving towards beta. Beta is when we plan for it to be used on a broader perspective and like a broader basis, just beyond individuals. And then it kind of bridges into liquid staking pools and entities. And that's kind of its next larger adoption hurdle, if you will. Each like phase of adoption has, certain hurdles that we have to get over. With liquid staking pools, it's quite interesting because I love how people like to say that they're centralized, but they're not, because getting DVT included in like a mature liquid staking pool is, it's taken like nearly 2 years, and we probably are still, the guts of 4 to 6 months away from like actually being able to coordinate all the different people inside of these ecosystems to switch over the technology. So that's definitely like one hurdle that like we shouldn't understate to adoption. And it's not like convincing people, it's actually coordination, which is where we're at, like with the adoption of the technology, is coordinating a second dev team now, coordinating research for V2, coordinating V1 adoption. So the network itself, Obol's decentralizing before our eyes, which is quite nice to see. But right now, the biggest hurdle to adoption is really just human coordination. And it'll be one of those things too, where like, you're at home, we've had most of the initial validators that we've had have been at-home style validators. There's been some entities, but the majority have actually been at-home validators. And that's what you see in kind of all kind of grassroots movements, right? You have your enthusiasts, they come in first, they take on the risk, then the entities begin to step in and help out. And then the B2B kind of system comes into software adoption. And right now where we're headed is like rushing into that like B2B phase. And they're not normal businesses anymore. They're actually decentralized communities, which has been an interesting thing to deal with.
I see. That's interesting. And I guess like speaking of like challenges, right, we probably have to consider regulatory landscape as well, right? Do you have any thoughts on that and whether that affects DVT or Obol in any case?
Yeah, it's a good question. We joined POSA at the end of last year as like a regulatory group to get behind, and we've had a great experience with them so far. It's a difficult, there's only one jurisdiction where it's very difficult to understand, and that's the US. Pretty much everyone else kind of has rules. So today that still like continues to be the elephant in the room. Obol Labs is a US company. We have US investors, we have US users. So yeah, it's our kind of goal to figure out how to navigate that and like add value, right? With like what we learned with DVT. DVT can enable like a series of super innovative things like, running a validator node across 15 different countries. You can do that with DVT. But, is that more complex for that current environment? Or is it helpful? Is one of the things we're currently focused on.
Right, I see. And I think on the other side, right, DVT is also helping, let's say, regulations is basically, to help secure the investors, like making sure that the funds are safe and so on. Right? So DVT is going to be a way where we can help ensure that staking is a safer form of investment or assets that we can do. So that's going to be interesting.
We've had just on that point, we've had quite a heightened interest recently from different reinsurers and insurance providers for the staking industry who are looking for DVT to be a part of kind of their criteria of risk, if you will. And that's also like a big adoption point for us. Whereas, DVT is essentially kind of this Intel inside type thing, right? It's like inside of the system, it's inside of the machine. And it's following similar qualification to those products' traditional and historical growth trends. So now we're seeing more security-focused people coming in, which is great because it is a security protocol at the end of the day. And if it's able to like lower insurance premiums for large and institutional validators, it's also kind of a huge point of adoption for us.
Right. That sounds great because from what I have studied so far, insuring all those assets that you're staking is actually you hit pretty big premium on that, right? So DVT is helping. Yeah.
It's actually completely unfeasible for firms unless you're one or two firms. Even like there was an old proposal on the Lido DAO that it was going to cost them like 25% of their treasury or something to like insure it all. So yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is today, like in the current construct of validating ETH2, a bad day at the office is losing all your 32 ETH. With DVT, a bad day at the office is not losing 32 ETH. So it's a kind of a completely different situation. The insurance problem right now is, absolute loss is actually something that exists. And now our goals are to try to create software and solutions to mitigate that.
Right. I think that's a great illustration. So I just want to talk about like existing staking a bit. So we have like centralized staking services. We have decentralized one like Lido and Rocket Pool and so on. And then we have home staking, right? One of the misconceptions is that DVT is going to replace those services, right? Can you maybe touch on that, whether that's true or not, or how actually DVT is going to impact those staking services?
Yeah, that's a good question. So today, I've watched kind of the whole thing from Genesis and the different validator types, and the different entities and the different products and all this stuff evolve. And honestly, there's far more different types of staking today than I thought there would be, but that's a good thing. So like today, yeah, we have like these 3 user groups, but there's even a couple more that like we've seen pop up that could use DVT to do certain things, more DeFi primitives and things as well. So yeah, each user group has their own benefit as to why DVT helps them. Today, it's all complementary. It's not really competitive with any of those because it is a primitive. So each type of user has its own benefits, which has been interesting for us to prove to ourselves. So you have your liquid staking pool, and its benefit is I need to decentralize, I need to decrease risk, I need to add more validators without increasing the chances of it being slashable. I need to have semi-pros or at-home validators in these pools for means of decentralization. So it's a good tool for them, for that. Your centralized validator has a completely different product. They have overlapping, user bases, but predominantly they have a different type of user. Those users like trust. They like, an individual person to go to, and having it be off-chain and an agreement off-chain for them is just, what they want. Those people are using DVT to scale their operations, which also the validators in the pool can do. And what I mean by that is today, since the entire ETH2 like infrastructure stack, if you ran your same key in a second place offline and then you had a false positive, for example, you would get slashed. That's the #1 slashable offense in the network to date. So like every single person who built their infrastructure just has a ton of extra machines. Because like if a machine dies and there's 10,000 ETH on it, you just let it die and then you bring it back online later because the penalties are less than potentially getting slashed, right, on that. So like the centralized validator today has an inefficient infrastructure setup, and they're looking to DVT to like decrease their costs, but also increase their security, which is very important for them because most of these centralized validators now are trying to get SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant. They're trying to get these good insurance deals for their business models. So anything they can do to cut their costs and increase their security is like a massive benefit for them. And the adoption there, by the way, has come a lot quicker than we expected it to. We kind of thought this would be like tier 2, tier 3 of the wave of adoption, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in that area now. And then the at-home, the at-home validator where we started the whole mission with squad staking, this concept of getting together with your friends, pooling your ETH together and doing it. Some may say that that is like competitive to liquid staking, but I don't believe it to be. I actually just believe it to be a new outlet for the at-home validator that may not want to take the risk on of a pool that doesn't have 32 ETH. But maybe you have 4 friends, right? So like you and your 4 friends should be able to come together and just start your own validator and share it with each other. And this is kind of like the squad staking community element, which is really like the long-term thing, in my opinion, right? Like if DVT is successful, it helps all of those different user types. But what it also does more is that it promotes a certain group of people get online for the first time. And it enables people to share infrastructure all over the world. Kind of like, you can think of it as like a validator bazaar. People in different countries running at-home machines together, all connected into one. Like that user group is the most important for the long-term viability of Ethereum. So that is where, where some of the early adoption will come, and then most of the late adoption of this protocol as we mature it over the next 10, 15 years will come from that type of staker. So that's another very important one for us. We've seen some DeFi use cases as well recently. People are building kind of collateralized stablecoins with liquid stake tokens and receipt tokens, which is pretty interesting, as that also is kind of this meta product, which includes risk parameters. That product would be more safe if all of those liquid stake receipt tokens were using DVT, for example. So that's like another new product that's being developed or new idea that the industry is working on, which is quite exciting.
Right. That's cool. I love how you paint the picture of how the landscape is evolving through DVT, right? So I just want to kind of like jump on to a different topic a bit, right? So it's interesting that Obol is not focusing just on Ethereum, right? You did some, I think, some research and some testing on Cosmos as well, right? Can you touch on that a bit, like how DVT and Obol is potentially could be entering the Cosmos ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, we've spent the past, well, we've been working on DVT, right, for more than 3.5 years now. So, we've been thinking about the Ethereum validator for a very long time. So we did an effort at the end of last year to focus on two new actors to see if it fit and what the industry landscape looked like. We did a research effort on Cosmos, and then we actually did a research effort on layer two. And yesterday, Figment dropped a piece around distributed sequencers, and we'll be making a move with some research and some stuff there over the coming weeks. So yeah, there's two areas that we're researching. The more public one right now is Cosmos, and it's for the simple reason that we believe that there might be an adjacent layer one ecosystem that can grow large enough that requires DVT's properties. And that's really what we've learned in the Cosmos example, is that you can make DVT work with different types of cryptography schemes. For example, Cosmos doesn't use BLS signatures. You can make it work in those areas as well. However, an ecosystem has to be willing to, accept the cost of DVT. Because there's a cost to adopt it, there's a cost to maintain it, there's a cost to educate around it. And we found that people are really only ready to invest in that when there's a certain value at risk inside of a system. And we saw that clearly happen with Ethereum. There was a lot of kind of skepticism of DVT at the beginning. Why do I need this new thing? Everything's working well for me. And then the ecosystem got very, very large. And then it's like, okay, well, all we have to do now is invest in security primitives to maintain, what we've built. So we found a lot of benefit in Cosmos. We're still actively involved in the ecosystem. We're going to publish some more research in the coming weeks and months around different ways that it could be implemented. And ultimately seeing, does the Cosmos community accept DVT? And if it does, then, we'll have a further discussion about how Obol can be a part of that, or how Obol can help the Cosmos ecosystem build it out for their own validator set.
That sounds great. And just for the audience out there, right, the difference between, say, Ethereum ecosystem and Cosmos is that on Ethereum POS, we are actually seeing hundreds and thousands of validators, right? But on Cosmos, due to, say, consensus design, we are only seeing in the hundreds range, right, where people can delegate to those, 100 or multi-hundreds validators there, right? So I think one way where Obol and DVT is gonna help a lot there is to help decentralize those validators, even though there's a consensus limit of a few hundreds validators there, right? So it's exciting to how we are going to see Obol and DVT contributing to other blockchain spaces outside of Ethereum as well. So I think that's going to be exciting. So we only have a few minutes left, so maybe I'll leave off with one last question. So Obol talks a lot about public goods, being sustainable public goods, doing retroactive public goods funding as well. Can you touch on a bit on that, on what do you mean by public goods? How does Obol evolve around that, and how are you pushing that space?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So the way that we look at this middleware layer is it'll need to be funded into the future somehow. The client teams, for example, they have their own funding structure, which is, has been primarily bankrolled by the EF and other people. And now they're independent entities. Some of them have 2 or 3 other business lines. And now there's the new middleware layer. So the new middleware layer needs to figure out what its monetary system is. And it's very similar, in my opinion, to Optimism, the layer 2 ecosystem, right? These are projects which at the beginning have quasi forms of public and private funding, and then eventually they have to learn how to sustain themselves. So we believe that the best baseline model for the middleware layer is one of retroactive public goods, where the protocol is actually taking in some type of ETH denominated fee, and then it is recycling it back into the community to make sure that decentralizing projects are being built on Obol, decentralizing projects are being built on Ethereum. Small and at-home validators have, adequate funding. Protocol Guild has adequate funding. Gitcoin has adequate, funding. ETH Staker, these different types of communities need to be funded from other places now. So in our opinion, DVT and Obol is sits at a really great layer for us to be responsible as a community for recycling capital back into projects that need to help grow and sustain the ecosystem. and I was an early employee at Consensus. I've been around in Ethereum a very long time, and like I've seen the funding structure of public goods over time, and like retroactive public goods through projects is definitely 100% the next chapter, because like Consensus can't fund everything forever, the EF can't fund everything forever, and now it's up to the projects to fund things. And I think what Optimism has done has like taken the torch, if you will, of the future funding structure of these different infrastructure projects. It decentralizes it. It's very healthy. So yeah, that's like what we hope to achieve. We think that's our responsibility. And as we like work on what the economics are, as our users grow and the network matures, you can expect more communication from us. But yeah, we made a promise to retrofit the public goods in the early days, and that'll be the primary economic model that we push forward.
Wow, that's great. So yeah, we only have 1 minute left. Perhaps Collin, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, thanks everyone for having me today. If there's one thing I'd leave you all with, it's that Validator should be run by communities, not individuals. We are at that chapter and evolution of Ethereum. It's super exciting. I hope everyone gets involved. If you have any questions, please come join the Obol community. We have a good, infrastructure set up to get you on board, get you running validators on testnet or mainnet if you want. Want to give a shout out to the organizers today for inviting me out. Super bullish on Thailand. Hoping to make it there in the coming months. And Obol will be in Asia. We'll be in South Korea. We'll be in Singapore. We'll be in Hong Kong in the later parts of this year. So yeah, looking forward to meeting all of you.
Wow, what a great session. So we did touch on staking, we did touch on DVT, we did touch on Cosmos, and even on public goods. So thank you so much for a really valuable session today. Thank you so much, Collin. So hoping to see you again pretty soon, and hopefully see you again at the next DVT tomorrow.
Yeah, cheers everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.